What's up, cats and kittens? It's me, the Cerebral Diva. Shout out to all my Cerebralites. And today we are going to talk about a very touchy subject within the African American community, and not just the African American community, because, in today's day and age, this is not just a black thing anymore. This is sort of a universal thing. Because even Beyonce got in trouble for this maybe about a year or two ago. So we're going to talk about cultural appropriation and exactly how to define such a nebulous term, because your cultural appropriation may not be my cultural appropriation, because I hate this thing about the black community being, or the African American community being, a monolith where we all think and believe and feel the same things, because I for one do not. Now, just to touch on this really quick, because I mentioned it in the opening, a few years ago, I believe, Beyonce, she was, I don't know if it was for a video or if it was for a concert performance, but she basically dressed up in Indian garb. And by Indian, I mean not Native American, but we're talking like Bollywood garb for a video or for a concert performance. And people were very upset with Beyonce because they were saying that she was appropriating Indian culture. And to me, I didn't see it that way. I just saw it as her having an appreciation or an affinity for uh, Bollywood and the saris and all the things that make traditional Indian garb beautiful. But people were upset about that. Now, who am I as a black person to tell another Indian person what they can be offended by? I don't have the right to do that. If they say they're offended by Beyonce doing that, then that I'm not Indian, so I can't tell them not to be offended. So if they're offended, then they're offended. And the reason I'm talking about this is because there are two things that happened recently in pop culture. Um, the first thing was this Tory Burch campaign. Now, I made a video a few weeks ago about this Tory Burch campaign where they use Juju on that beat in support of their spring campaign. And a lot of black people were very upset with the fact that Tory Burch used this campaign, which is a Juju on that beat. If you guys aren't familiar with it, it's all over YouTube. It's one of those sort of dance songs that they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Um, so they used this particular song in their campaign, and a lot of people in the African American community were very upset about it. Now, I wasn't bothered by it. One of the primary reasons that I was not bothered by it was the fact that the young men who created this particular song had to give Tory Burch the right to use the song. And if they are not offended by it, then why should I? Why should I? And not only that, if we're offended by Tory Burch using the song, why are we not offended by these young men for allowing them to use the song in a way that furthers cultural appropriation? So for that reason, it didn't bother me. Now, there was something about a monkey being in the lap of one of the models, and in the commercial for this Tory Burch spring line, I forgot to mention, it's all white models. um Not a single black model was in the commercial, and some people were offended by the fact that there wasn't a black model. Now, to which I say, had Tory Burch have used a black model in this commercial, then I would probably be one of the black people saying that they are basically using a token black and stereotyping us as people who dance to this type of music when not all of us do. Not all of us juju. Myself, I'm not a jujuer. So I'm not going to identify with that song. Now, I get that some people do. So far be it for me to not tell those people to not be offended. All I can say is it did not offend me. When I see Philando Castile shot in a car by a police officer, I'm offended by that. When I see Eric Garner being choked to death, I'm offended by that. When I see Freddie Gray being killed in the back of a police van, I'm offended by that. There are things as a black person that offend me, but Juju on that beat is just not high on my priority of things to be offended by. When Colin Kaepernick is criticized in the media for kneeling peacefully in protest to what's happening in our society, I'm offended by that. But I'm not offended by Juju on that beat. And a lot of people are upset at me because I don't view it as cultural appropriation. Now, they're also upset because there's this new, oh my gosh, there's this new character on Love and Hip Hop called Lovely Mimi. And Lovely Mimi is Vietnamese. And she's sort of like the Vietnamese Rachel Dolezal, where well, and I don't even know if I want to call her Rachel Dolezal, because I think it's a disservice to Rachel Dolezal, because I'm actually partial to Rachel Dolezal, and I know I'm probably in the minority, no pun intended. But she's I'm comparing her to Rachel Dolezal in the sense that Lovely Mimi is sort of transracial. Even though she is Vietnamese, she behaves in a way that most of us would consider stereotypically black, or yeah, stereotypically black is probably the best way I could describe it, because it's definitely not indicative of black people as a whole, because I do know some people who behave that way, but I know a lot of black people who don't behave that way. And I know a lot of black people who can behave in both ways, who are very sophisticated, but they still have a touch of ratchet in them as well, myself included. Hello. So Lovely Mimi is on this show, and she says and does some things. I believe she uses the N word, which is another thing about cultural appropriation that I want to talk about. We'll come back to Lovely Mimi, you guys. But like the N word, to me, I hate that word. I mean, every time I hear it, it's like nails across the chalkboard, and it never gets old. I'm actually going to do a story time about the N word, because I have a situation that I want to talk about the N word. But the N word is a word that kept us as a community, as a people, subjugated. Now, we've taken the N word and culturally appropriated it into our lexicon and made it okay. Now, I don't care how many times people tell me the difference between an ER and an A, Nigga or Nigger. It doesn't matter to me. To me, that's just that's tomato and tomato. It's the same thing with a different accent, with a different pronunciation. I hate the word, and I hate that we've taken that word, and people say, well, we've taken it and spent the word, and and made it our own, and we've taken power and control over the word. I don't want any power and control over that word. That is not a word that I want to be associated with. And I hate the fact, once again, that we've made that word culturally appropriate, and that we use it in the presence, like, even if we were going to use that word, must we use it on every single song? Must we use it to describe ourselves in the third person? Like, I hate it. 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 So if we're going to talk about cultural appropriation, and people, I know people are going to be upset with me for saying this, but we've culturally appropriated probably the most ignorant word, the most hateful word, the most bigoted word into our lexicon and made it okay. And for me, that word will never be okay. So some people will get mad at Juju on that beat being used by Tory Burch, but I get mad at hearing that word being normalized in our culture, when it should never be normalized as far as I'm concerned. Now, okay, now that I'm off of that rant, back to Lovely Mimi. So Lovely Mimi has been accused of using that word, and once again, she's not black, but she's what I'm going to call transracial, which is why I compared her to Rachel Dolezal. And people are upset with her too, because she's basically cooning, she's shucking and jiving, and it's painful to watch. I have to say that, not just painful as as a black person, but painful I think for the Vietnamese culture, because she was sort of doing this sort of stereotypical affectation of a Vietnamese or Korean woman who does nails, which if I were Korean, I would be completely offended by that stereotypical impersonation that she did. So clearly she's an equal opportunity offender. She just doesn't really have a filter, and for some reason not having a filter in our society, or not being quote unquote PC, is sort of the end thing to do. And I'm just so tired of people trying to define the things that I should be offended by and the things that I should not be offended by. I'm offended by the N word. I'm not offended by Juju on that beat being used by Tory Burch. That's not going to change. I'm offended by the N word. I'm not necessarily offended by women who want to put their hair in Bantu knots. As I said before, what I put on my head doesn't change what's in my head. What I put on, if I put a shirt on my chest, it's not going to change what's in my heart. Those things I take off. They are not a part of the fabric of who I am. It is decorative. It is ornamental. It is an adornment. It does not change my thought process. It does not change the way that I see myself. So if another person, if Beyonce wants to dress up in Indian garb, then I'm not offended by it. But if other Indian people are, then so be it. If Khloe Kardashian wants to put in Bantu knots, yes, I get the fact that as African Americans, we're very often told to do things in order for us to assimilate within the white culture, but I can't necessarily be upset with Khloe Kardashian for wearing Bantu knots, because we have a legacy of hate and discrimination within our culture. If she's just using Bantu knots as a form of self-expression, as a form of style, I'm not really bothered by that. Like I said before, I think there are more pressing things for me to be bothered by. There's a hierarchy in terms of what I'm offended by, and personal fashion isn't very high on my list of priorities. And if that doesn't make sense, oh well. It makes sense to me. There are more pressing matters. I'm offended by, predatory lenders being in the neighborhood conducting payday loans and taking advantage of people who are already disadvantaged. That's offensive to me. That to me is cultural appropriation, when we're taking advantage of the disadvantaged and using usury to take advantage of an already vulnerable segment of our population. There's so many other things, like I said, that really bother me. So I'm not really focused on the minutia of Juju on that beat. And if you are, great. All right. So that's about all I have to say on that subject, you guys. As always, in closing, remember to live better, love harder, think smarter. Like, comment, subscribe. If you have comments that are averse to my own comments or my own thoughts, please leave them below. But just be respectful. I don't have an issue with people who beliefs are different from my own. I just really get upset with the fact that people feel the need to be confrontational or to be argumentative versus having a dialogue. So, typically if you're going to say something ignorant, I'm just going to block you. But if you want to make a valid point and you want to have an exchange, then I'm always open to doing that. That's about it. It's late. I need to go to bed. You guys take care, and I will see you again soon.